There's a notebook sitting inside an elementary school desk. 5th grade. Room full of empty chairs. October light coming through the windows. Inside that notebook, written in a child's handwriting, sometimes tiny letters, sometimes large ones stretched across the page, is a homework assignment, the kind teachers give to help kids understand grammar. 4 types of sentences: declarative, interrogative, exclamatory, imperative. And for her imperative sentence, the one that gives a command, a 10-year-old girl had written this: "Watch out for strangers." She underlined it. The girl who wrote those words understood something about the world. She had been told. She had listened. She was careful. And none of it was enough to save her. Before we go any further, I need you to understand what kind of story this is. This documentary contains descriptions of violence against a child. It includes details about abduction, murder, and the investigation that followed. If at any point this becomes too much, please take care of yourself. Step away. Come back when you're ready, or don't come back at all. There's no shame in protecting your peace. I'm telling this story because I believe it matters, because there are lessons buried in the tragedy, and because a little girl named Jessica deserves to be remembered as more than a case file. Westminster, Colorado sits northwest of Denver, nestled in that stretch of suburbs where the Great Plains start giving way to the Rocky Mountains. It's the kind of place where people move to raise families. Good schools, low crime, parks with walking trails, the kind of neighborhood where kids still ride bikes until the streetlights come on. In October 2012, a woman named Sarah Ridgeway lived there with her mother Christine, her sister Rebecca, and her daughter, a 10-year-old girl with blonde hair and blue eyes who had recently started 5th grade at Witt Elementary School. Jessica Ridgeway. If you asked anyone who knew her to describe Jessica in one word, most would say the same thing: joyful. She was the kind of kid who lit up a room without trying. Teachers loved her because she actually wanted to learn, raising her hand, asking questions, helping other students. Her classmates loved her because she made everyone feel included. She'd walk up to new kids and introduce herself. She'd share her snacks. She told knock-knock jokes constantly. Jessica loved animals. She loved the color purple. Not just liked it, loved it, the way only a child can commit to a favorite color. She loved watching shows like Victorious and Wizards of Waverly Place. She made up her own dance routines and songs. She dreamed of being a cheerleader someday, and she'd already promised her mom that when she made the squad, she'd be the kind of cheerleader who was nice to everyone. Her parents, Sarah and Jeremiah, had separated years earlier. Her father lived in Missouri. There had been the usual complications, custody issues, child support disputes, but Jessica loved both her parents deeply, and they loved her. That was never in question. A few weeks before October 5th, Jessica had asked her mom for something specific: an alarm clock. She wanted to start waking herself up in the mornings. She wanted to be more independent, more grown-up. She was 10. She had her whole life ahead of her. Friday, October 5th, 2012. The first snow of the season had fallen overnight. Not much, just a light dusting, but enough to make the world feel different. Colder, quieter. Jessica woke up at 7:45 a.m. She'd set her new alarm clock. Her mom, Sarah, had just finished working the overnight shift, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., at her job. She was exhausted, running on empty, but she was there to see her daughter off to school. They ate breakfast together. Jessica had a granola bar. They peeled an orange together, and Jessica packed it for her lunch. Around 8:30, Jessica put on her puffy black winter coat, grabbed her backpack, it had a keychain with her name on it, and walked out the front door. Sarah watched her go. Then she closed the door, went to bed, and fell asleep. It was the last time she would ever see her daughter alive. Jessica's routine was simple. She'd walk about 5 minutes to Chelsea Park, a small green space in the neighborhood, where she'd meet up with a few friends. Then the group would walk together to Witt Elementary, another 10 minutes away. That morning, her friends waited at their usual spot. Jessica never showed up. The other girls were young, around Jessica's age, and they didn't think much of it. Maybe she was sick, maybe she was running late. They couldn't afford to miss the bell, so eventually they kept walking without her. At 10 a.m., school administrators noticed Jessica's absence. She had never missed school. She was never late, Something felt wrong, so they called her mother. But Sarah was asleep. She'd just worked a 12-hour shift. The school left a voicemail. Hours passed. At 4:30 in the afternoon, 8 hours after Jessica had walked out the door, Sarah finally woke up, checked her phone, and heard the message. Her stomach dropped. She drove to the park. Nothing. She drove to the school. Nothing. She went to the homes of Jessica's friends. Nobody had seen her. Nobody knew anything. That's when Sarah picked up the phone and called Westminster Police. By 9:15 that evening, investigators had gathered enough information to classify this as what they feared most: a probable kidnapping. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation issued an Amber Alert. Jessica's face was broadcast across the state. 10 years old, 4'10", shoulder-length blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen wearing a black puffy jacket. Within hours, more than 50 officers were deployed: Westminster PD, the FBI, state investigators, local volunteers, search and rescue teams, K-9 units, thermal imaging equipment. The works. But they were already behind. 8 hours. That's how much of a head start whoever took Jessica had. 8 hours in any direction. That's hundreds of miles. Thousands of possible locations. Still, they searched. Officers went door to door through Westminster and surrounding neighborhoods. They combed parks, fields, creeks, wooded areas, abandoned buildings. They set up checkpoints. Every car entering or leaving the neighborhood was photographed. They collected DNA samples from over 700 residents. Volunteers showed up in droves. Hundreds of people who'd never met Jessica but couldn't sit at home while a child was missing. They searched until 2 a.m., when authorities told them to go home, get some rest, and come back at first light. The community wrapped purple ribbons around mailboxes and trees, Jessica's favorite color. At her desk in school, someone found her notebook with the homework assignment inside. The one about watching out for strangers. 4 days after Jessica disappeared, her family finally stepped outside to speak to the media. They hadn't been able to leave the house until then. The weight of it was too much. But they wanted to appeal directly to whoever had taken their daughter, to the public, to anyone who might know something. Sarah spoke first, her voice breaking. "She's my rock. She's all of our rocks. The bright voice of my little girl. She needs to come home." Jessica's father, Jeremiah, had flown in from Missouri. He stood beside Sarah, his face hollow with exhaustion and fear. "I try to stay positive, but it's hard. I just want to find my daughter. I watched her walk out the door. I shut the door, and that's the last time I saw her. I want her to come walking back through that door." Police had already cleared both parents of any involvement. This was looking more and more like a stranger abduction, the rarest and most terrifying kind. 2 days after Jessica vanished, a man in Superior, a small town about 6 miles from Westminster, found something on the side of the road. A child's backpack, a pair of glasses, a water bottle, some clothing that smelled like urine. Attached to the backpack was a keychain. The name on it was Jessica. But here's the thing. The man who found it didn't make the connection. He wasn't following the news closely. He posted about it online in a local community group, basically saying, "Found this. If it's yours, come get it." Eventually, someone who saw the post realized what it might be and called 911. When Sarah heard about the backpack, she felt a tiny spark of hope. Maybe Jessica was still alive. Maybe whoever took her had let her go. Maybe she was wandering somewhere, scared but breathing. That hope lasted less than 48 hours. On October 10th, 5 days after Jessica disappeared, a maintenance worker in Arvada, another Denver suburb about 6 miles from Westminster, noticed something sitting along the side of a road near Patridge Park. 2 heavy black garbage bags. He didn't open them. Something told him not to. Instead, he flagged down a police officer with a K-9 unit. Inside the bags was a child's torso. DNA testing would later confirm what everyone already feared. The remains belonged to Jessica Ridgeway. Parts of her body were missing. At that point, investigators couldn't even determine an official cause of death. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. A predator was loose in their community. Westminster Police Chief Lee Burke addressed the media. "Our focus has shifted from searching for Jessica to seeking justice for Jessica. We understand that there is a predator at large in our community." The FBI released a psychological profile of the likely suspect. They urged residents to watch for anyone exhibiting sudden behavioral changes. Someone who'd recently shaved their head, changed their hair color, started parking their car in the garage when they'd always parked in the driveway. Someone whose mood or personality had shifted dramatically since October 5th. We believe someone in this community knows this individual, authorities said, and we're asking for your help. More than 3,000 people gathered for a memorial service in Arvada. They wore purple. They released balloons. They held candles. Jessica's favorite songs played through speakers. A sea of strangers mourning a little girl they'd never met. As investigators dug deeper, they found something that made the case even more disturbing. 4 months before Jessica was taken, on Memorial Day 2012, a woman had been jogging near Kettner Lake, not far from where Jessica was abducted. A man attacked her from behind, pressing a cloth with a chemical odor over her face. Chloroform. She was dragged into some bushes, but somehow she fought back. She escaped. She called 911. Her description of the attacker was vague. White male, average build, somewhere between 5'6" and 5'8", brown hair, possibly between 18 and 30 years old. When forensic analysts compared DNA recovered from the jogger attack to DNA found in Jessica's case, the results came back positive. Same attacker. This wasn't random. This was a predator who had struck before, and when his first attempt failed, he hadn't stopped. He'd simply chosen a smaller, more vulnerable target. After police released photos of a distinctive cross pendant found near Jessica's remains, a woman in the neighborhood recognized it. She lived near a family named Sig. And she knew their son, a 17-year-old named Austin Reed Sig, owned a cross that looked almost identical. But that wasn't the only thing that made her uneasy. She also knew Austin had an obsession. He talked openly about death, about decomposition, about what happens to human and animal bodies after they die. She contacted the FBI. Agents brought Austin in for questioning. He was calm, cooperative. He told them that on the day Jessica disappeared, he'd been home, asleep, nothing unusual. Investigators noticed he was wearing a cross around his neck, similar to the one in the photos. But his answers seemed to check out. They collected a DNA sample and moved on. There were thousands of tips to follow up on, hundreds of samples to process. According to standard procedure, DNA samples were sent to the lab, tested, and returned in envelopes. If the envelope came back empty, it meant no match. Austin Sig's envelope came back empty. He was cleared, or so everyone thought. October 22, 2012. The media was heavily covering a new development. Investigators had confirmed a DNA link between Jessica's murder and the earlier attack on the jogger. The story was everywhere. That day, Austin Sig told his classmates he felt sick, weak, like something was very wrong inside him. That night, he slept in his mother's bed. The next morning, October 23rd, Austin approached his mother, Mindy, and told her he had something horrible to confess. She knew immediately. "Is this about Jessica?" Austin confirmed her worst fear. Mindy collapsed. She sobbed. Her mind couldn't process what her son was telling her. "I'm going to prison," Austin said. "I know," Mindy replied. "You need to call the police." "Can you do it for me?" So she did. Mindy Sig picked up the phone and dialed 911. The call lasted nearly 18 minutes. "Dispatcher, Westminster Police, can I help you?" "Hi, I need you to come to my house. My son wants to turn himself in for the Jessica Ridgeway murder." "Can you tell me exactly what he said?" "He did it. He gave me details, and her remains, they're in my house." When police arrived, Austin was waiting. Over the next several hours, he confessed to everything. He admitted to attacking the jogger months earlier, using homemade chloroform he'd learned to make from the internet. When she escaped, he wasn't deterred. If anything, it taught him a lesson. He needed a smaller victim, someone he could overpower. Content warning. The following section contains disturbing details about a crime. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. According to Austin's confession, which he provided calmly, almost clinically, over hours of interrogation, this is what happened on October 5, 2012. He had parked his Jeep near Chelsea Park that morning. He wasn't looking for Jessica specifically. He didn't know her, had never seen her before. Random place, random time, random everything, he told detectives. He watched from his vehicle as a little girl played in the fresh snow, packing snowballs together. When she started walking, he positioned himself. He crouched in the back seat so she wouldn't see him through the windows. As Jessica walked past the Jeep, he jumped out and grabbed her, pulling her inside. She screamed, but there was no one around to hear. He bound her hands and feet with plastic zip ties. He drove her to his house, just over a mile away, where his mother was at work. What happened in that house is known only through Austin's own account, and investigators believed he likely understated or omitted parts of the truth. He claimed he tried to calm Jessica down, turned on cartoons for her, told her she would be going home soon. She kept asking questions. "Who are you? Do you know my mom?" He lied to her, reassured her, kept her believing she would survive. Then he strangled her. Austin admitted to dismembering her body in the bathtub. He claimed his knowledge came from studying mortuary science at a local community college and from what he called research into forensic techniques. He placed her torso in garbage bags and eventually dumped them where they would be found. He hid other remains in the crawl space beneath his mother's home. When investigators asked him what he would have done if the jogger attack had succeeded, he answered, without hesitation, "The same thing." When they asked him if he had been hunting that morning in October, he said, "Yeah, that's the only word I can think of." Here's what investigators discovered after Austin was in custody. His DNA sample, the one that came back clear, had never actually been tested. It was lost. A clerical error. An empty envelope was returned with his name on it, and everyone assumed that meant no match. Austin didn't know this. When media reports started talking about the DNA connection between cases, he assumed police had already matched him. He thought it was only a matter of time before they came knocking. That fear is what pushed him to confess. If not for that fear, if he had known his sample was lost, he might never have said anything. Austin Reed Sigg was 17 years old. He was the son of Robert Sigg, a media executive with a complicated past that included fraud charges and domestic violence allegations. His parents had divorced, but both remained involved in his life. His mother, Mindy, raised him primarily and later described him as a beautiful baby, a smart and kind little boy. But something had gone wrong. By Austin's own admission, he became addicted to violent and exploitative material online starting around age 12. His parents discovered it. They sought help. They sent him to a faith-based counselor. It didn't work. Everything just kept getting worse, Austin later told investigators. It happened so slowly I didn't even realize how heavy it was becoming. It took over me. His doctors urged his father to monitor and restrict his access to computers and television, but the obsession continued. It escalated. He dropped out of traditional high school after being bullied about his voice. He earned a GED. He enrolled in community college to study mortuary science, the handling and preparation of dead bodies. Neighbors described him as awkward, unsettling. One mother later revealed that her 11-year-old daughter had pointed to Austin shortly after Jessica's disappearance and said, "Mom, I know who did it. The goth teenager from the park." Nobody believed her. Austin Sigg was charged as an adult on 17 counts. 11 related to Jessica's murder, 6 related to the attack on the jogger. Because he was 17 at the time of the crime, he was ineligible for the death penalty under a 2005 Supreme Court ruling. His defense attorneys argued that his actions were impulsive, that he suffered from developmental issues potentially caused by trauma during his mother's pregnancy and his birth, and that as a juvenile, he deserved the possibility of rehabilitation. Prosecutors disagreed. They pointed to his internet search history, queries about how to make homemade chloroform, lists of top places people get abducted, research into how serial killers dispose of bodies. This was not impulsive. This was planned. Just 2 days before his trial was scheduled to begin, almost exactly 1 year after Jessica walked out her front door, Austin Sigg changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to 15 charges, including first-degree murder, sexual assault of a minor, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, and sexual exploitation of a child. The judge, Stephen Munsinger, sentenced him to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years for the murder charge. But that wasn't enough. Munsinger added 86 consecutive years for the other charges, kidnapping, sexual assault, robbery, the attack on the jogger. Even if Austin somehow became eligible for parole on the murder charge, he would still have nearly a century of time to serve. This case cries out for a life sentence, the judge said. Austin showed no emotion as the sentence was read. When his attorney asked if he was okay, he simply said, "Yeah, I'm fine." Mindy Sigg, the mother who turned her own son in, never regretted her decision. "I would literally give my life to change what happened," she later said. "I would trade places with Jessica in a heartbeat." She threw herself into therapy. She struggled with panic attacks, suicidal thoughts, and crushing guilt. Not because she had done anything wrong, but because she had brought Austin into the world. She hasn't spoken to him since the day he was arrested. He's never reached out to her. "I can't allow him to lie to me," she explained. "And I never got an answer to why." Jessica's grandmother, Christine, said the family felt compassion for Mindy. "We understand that she lost her son too. It's a different kind of loss, but she still lost him. My heart goes out to her. If we could have hugged her in court, we probably would have." On October 5, 2013, exactly 1 year after Jessica disappeared, Westminster dedicated a memorial park in her honor. Chelsea Park, where she used to play, was transformed. New playground equipment in purple and green, her favorite colors. A giant dragonfly teeter-totter, because Jessica had been working on a school project about dragonflies when she was taken. Sidewalks etched with knock-knock jokes submitted by her 5th grade classmates. More than 600 people attended the dedication ceremony. "Jessica's laughter will be here echoing forever," her grandmother Christine said. Then she turned to the children in the crowd, Jessica's classmates, standing quietly in front of the stage, and said something that captures exactly who Jessica was. "Go play. Jessica would not want you standing here mourning her." And so they did. They ran to the swings, they climbed, they laughed, they played, just like she would have wanted. 5 years after losing her daughter, Sarah gave birth to another little girl. She named her Anna Christine, giving her the same middle name Jessica had. Anna has blue eyes. A different shade than Jessica's, but blue. "She's not replaced," Sarah said. "She's expanded. Jessica definitely has an extra special angel watching over her now." The family still wears purple. They still talk about Jessica. They still celebrate her birthday and remember her every October 5th. Sarah once described the grief like this: "It's like a plate shattering, with one piece lost forever. You can try as hard as you want to glue it back together, but the cracks will always remain. It will never be the same again. You can't ever put it back together perfectly. But you keep going, one day at a time, carrying the weight, honoring the memory, because that's what love does." Here's what I keep coming back to. Jessica Ridgeway did everything right. She was cautious, she was aware, she wrote warnings to herself in her school notebook, she walked with friends, she didn't talk to strangers, and it still wasn't enough. That's the terrifying truth this case forces us to confront. Sometimes evil doesn't wait for you to make a mistake. Sometimes it just finds you. But here's the other truth. The one that matters more. A community showed up. Hundreds of strangers searched through the night for a little girl they'd never met. Thousands wore purple. A mother made an unimaginable choice and did the right thing. A family that had every reason to crumble somehow found a way to keep standing. Jessica's legacy isn't just a park with knock-knock jokes carved into the sidewalk. It's a reminder that even in the darkest moments, people choose goodness. That matters. She matters. Remember her name. Thank you for staying with me through this one. I know it wasn't easy. If this story meant something to you, if you felt something, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. Not for the algorithm, but because these stories take time to research, write, and tell the right way. Your support helps me keep doing this work. Drop a comment if you'd like, tell me where you're watching from, tell me what you're thinking, or just sit with it for a while. That's okay too. Take care of yourselves, hold your loved ones a little closer today, and I'll see you in the next one.